Hello and welcome to 7 days of Halloween. Welcome back to day 2 of my 7 days of Halloween. Well, today we're going to be playing with some grit paste, and as you can see, I have 3 different types. I've got glow, I've got black opaque, and I've also got crypt. Now, last year when the glow came out, I was really excited about it, but I just didn't take the plunge and invest in it. But this year I decided to go ahead and grab all 3 of them to play with them this season. I figure I could use the grit paste and the texture paste for Christmas projects. The glow paste certainly can be done as well, maybe on a moon. So we're going to see what we can do with this today. Now, if you've never used any of the distress pastes before, the texture of it is creamy. It is kind of like frosting, and they easily move through your stencils. Most of the time when I'm using my distress paste, I'm using either the white or this year, like I said, I've grabbed the black. So this is your smoothest one. Your grit paste, on the other hand, is going to be a little bit more thick. It does have more texture in it, but not to say that I won't go through your stencils, but just keep in mind the texture is going to be a little bit more thick for you. Okay, so now that we have all 3 of our texture pastes open up, we're going to go ahead and grab an oversized stencil, and we're going to add the 3 colors to 3 different sheets here. The stencil I'm going to be using today is this oversized alchemy stencil, and it is fun. I love the fact that the title, the alchemy, fits exactly on a 5x7 card. So if you want to just do cards versus a bigger background, you can easily use it to cover your card base and still get some wonderful script. So to be able to check on my progress as I go along, I did just add some blue painter's tape to the top of the stencil to kind of keep it in place, and so I can open it up. And then I'm also going to add some painter's tape to the back of my cardstock. As you can see here, I just kind of rolled it so it is double-sided. If you wanted to use double-sided tape, that would be fine as well. But I'm going to go ahead and just add that so it will stay on my surface as I add my paste. So the tool that I'm using here, you can find in a lot of the craft stores, but I actually picked up mine at Home Depot. I found a 3-pack, which was pretty inexpensive, and it does the same thing. So this is the medium scraper that I'm using right now, but it did come in a small and a larger one as well. So if you do have a local hardware store around, you might want to check in the tool section, because a lot of the tools that crafters use can be found in your local hardware store for a lot less expensive. So as you can see, the paste just goes on really smoothly, and I'm making sure I just have a smooth layer. I don't want it to be too thick, so I'm making sure that as I add my texture paste, I go over the areas that I've already added paste to smooth it out. I mean, there's an easy way to see what layer you want. Even if you have a bigger spatula, or the small one will work as well. Just do a final once over and make sure it's smooth with no lines. So once you're happy with your texture paste, then you're going to lift up your stencil. And what I would say about stencils, especially when you're using texture paste, you want to make sure that you wash them after each round. This texture paste, when it dries, will become rock hard. So you definitely don't want to have your stencils ruined, and it just makes sense to kind of clean as you go. In this case, we're going to be using it for all 3 cards, so I definitely have to clean it as I go, and it's nice to be able to start out with a nice clean surface. Additionally, you do want to also clean off your any of the tools that you're going to be using, because texture paste does not discriminate. It will dry on any surface that it's on, including your media pad. All right, so once I have my texture paste cleaned off of my little black tool there, I went ahead and just lifted up the card, and as you can see, it is really, really fun. You're not going to see the effects of the glow in the dark yet, of course, because I have light on this card, but once it dries and you have your card all completed, it's going to be a fun card to be able to send out to maybe a little a friend or a little child to be able to have a card glow in the dark. Okay, so with the clean surface, I'm going to go ahead and start with my next texture paste. Now, since I am going back to back using my texture pastes, here what you see, I just kind of wiped off the excess, and then I'll do a good thorough cleaning at the end. Certainly if you have a spray bottle, I would recommend perhaps using some water spray onto your stencil as well to help clean it up. But as you can see here, just basically wiping it, you are going to still get remnants of it. Now, if that's what you want, I mean, if you're using glow paste and you want to have some remnants of that glow paste onto your next card, certainly don't do as good of a cleaning as you want to do once you're finished, because it might be kind of fun to have some of the remnants of that glow paste onto another card. You won't get the strength of the glow as you would if that's all you used, but you might get remnants of it, which might make it fun as well. Okay, so now I'm moving on to the black texture paste, and as you can see, this is pretty creamy as well. It goes on very nicely, and instantly you can see how dramatic this is going to look compared to the glow paste. So I'm just working through the same process, just getting my texture paste, adding it through my stencil, and then going over it to make sure I just have the single layer. This black paste is really easy to see, especially when it starts to glob up. You can kind of see it as I add it. So it should be pretty easy for you to get it into one thin layer. And as you can see, like I said, it's pretty dramatic. And then once you're happy with the layer, then just as before, you're going to go ahead and lift up your stencil to get that great reveal. This is always my favorite because it is just so impressive when you actually lift that stencil up and you can see your background, especially with the black. See how vibrant it is? And I went through the same process. I actually took the stencil to the sink this time because this is a darker color, just to make sure I can start out with a nice clean surface. All right, now we're working with the grit paste, and as you can see just from the get-go, it is a lot thicker than the other two pastes, but it still moves through the stencil pretty nicely. You can actually see the grit in this paste as I start to smooth it out, and it's just a fantastic effect. Grit paste is also really fun to use on its own. It creates great texture if you want to add it to some of your ideology items. To create a little bit more texture, but certainly it works really well in stencils as well. So you might have to do a little bit more pressure when you're using the grit paste through a stencil, but certainly it is possible and you will get a dramatic, fun effect. It's going to be a great background. All right, and then once you're finished, of course, after every use of your grit paste or any of your paste, you want to put the excess back in your jar and you want to seal it tightly. And then you have your dramatic reveal, lifting up your stencil and seeing this really fun background. So once you have your background revealed, you're going to want to, of course, clean up your area that you've been working with. If you want to save some of this grit paste that is excess that I'm pulling off right here, you can certainly stick that back in your jar as well, or just clean it off on a paper towel, but certainly you want to make sure you have a clean surface for the next process. So once we have our backgrounds completed, you're going to want to give it some drying time. So just set these aside, and then we can start working on the design of the card. So now that I've had some drying time, I'm going to go ahead and start to work on my design. And as you can see, these 3 pieces of cardstock are fantastic. They've got great texture, and they are completely dry. Now at this point, you can start adding additional media items. You can spray these. You can add, any of your wet liquids, perhaps some paint. And in this case, I'm using my Distress ink. The color I'm using is Scorched Timber, just to give it a little bit more shadow effect on the edges. Now, the one thing that you might have trouble with is stamping these, because you do have raised texture on these cards. Your stamp, if you do decide to use some stamping, won't give you a crisp image. I think you could probably get some grungy stamps and add some of the stamp backgrounds to your cardstock, and you might be able to get the effect that you want. But if you're looking for a crisp image after you've added your texture paste, don't think you're going to be able to accomplish it. All right, so for these cards, I already had an idea of what I was going to be doing. I was going to be using some of my Halloween clusters that I've made, along with some additional ephemera, to create a little scene. So knowing this, I was able to kind of get my background exactly on the base that I wanted. So for these cards, I want to go ahead and just add some cardstock to the background just to give it a nice frame. You're going to find sometimes with texture paste it will curl up your paper just a little bit. I mean, not bad. Keep in mind your texture paste is a little bit heavy, which helps to keep your cardstock flat. But certainly I always like to add some sort of a background to my cards, not necessarily just my cards that I use texture paste on, but any of my cards, because I love the way that it makes a nice border. And for the black and the glow in the dark, I did use a black cardstock. And then for the grit paste, I ended up using just some craft cardstock. I could have easily used the black. I mean, I think it would have been fine. But I just wanted to have a little bit of a difference just to see what my result will look like. Sometimes when you are playing along, it's nice to try something different. I mean, we can easily stay with what we know works all the time, but sometimes through experimental crafting, you find something that you would have never thought of before. I know that happens to me often where I'll just be playing along and I might make a mistake, or I might just accidentally do something that I wasn't intending to do, and I like the result. So don't be afraid to experiment and try different things. I mean, at the end of the day, it is just paper. If we do mess it up, we can always recreate it, and that's really what the fun is in crafting, is to be able to experiment and try different products, different designs, and see what we can come up with. Okay, so like I said, we're going to be decorating these backgrounds with ephemera, some paper dolls, and some Halloween clusters that I've created in the past. If you're not familiar with clusters, be sure to check out my other videos, which shows you how to create clusters. Now, what's fun about clusters is you've already got ready made layers, and I think to a lot of people, actual layering and finding the right pieces to use for your background is somewhat difficult. So if you can have a session where you just create layers, you'll have your backgrounds pretty much already set. So the first two cards, as you can see, I already had some of my clusters ready to go, and all I needed to do was to add my little character. And then on this third one, I am still using one of my smaller clusters, but as you can see, I'm adding additional pieces to just kind of make up the background. And layering is personal. Some people always ask me, how do you know when you have enough? And what I would say is, when it looks good to you, you have enough. When I am working with just single pieces of ephemera, or even making clusters, it does take me a little bit of time. I can't just sit down and put clusters together immediately. I have to sort through all of my ephemera pieces. I have to perhaps make some more ephemera pieces just till I get the right look. And the thing about clusters is you never know exactly what you're going to use them for. You might use them for a card. You might use them for a tag. You might use them on your own, but they're just still a lot of fun to make, and clusters will give you good practice on layering techniques as well. So I highly encourage you to check out my other video on layering to get some ideas on that as well. And then once you have all of your pieces in place and they're exactly where you want them, then you can start gluing them down. So for your clusters, obviously, it's going to be pretty easy to go ahead and just add your foam tape to give a little bit of texture, or just add your glue, however you want to go. But with the single ephemera pieces, you're going to have to either take a picture, go by memory, figure out exactly what the layer was that you liked to make sure you get it in exactly the same place. I know when I am using many ephemera pieces. I will sometimes take a picture using my phone so that way I can remember the layout. And then when I start to lift up the pieces, I'll remember where I had them placed. For this particular one, I am using a ready-made cluster and just a couple of ephemera pieces. So I was able to keep that to memory. But certainly if you are starting out with just single pieces, you can easily take a photo of it so that way you can copy the photo once you lift up all the pieces. All right, so for the actual background, as you can see, I just added glue. And then what I'm going to do for the actual paper dolls is I'm going to lift those up just a bit using some foam tape. Now, many of us have used foam tape before. We know that they come in different sizes. You can get really skinny strips. You can use the thicker strips. The width can be a little different. It just depends on what your desire is. They also have foam tape also in circles, in squares. You name it, they have it. So just find what you can use and then just get some good coverage. All right, so now that I have my foam tape all layered out on my paper dolls, I'm going to go ahead and place them. And what I would say about using your paper dolls or covering ephemera is in layering, you are going to cover pieces of your ephemera, and you just have to be okay with that. So just kind of play with it a little bit, figure out exactly what's important to you to be showing. In this case, the left card, I wanted to definitely have that trick or treat showing. And I was okay covering part of the sentiment that was on that label. And then for the middle one, again, I wanted that 5 to show on the back, on the side. And I wanted part of the black cat to show along with that number 95726. I wanted that to show as well. And then on the last one, I wanted that hawk to be kind of a focal point. So I made sure that I showed a lot of that hawk as well. So I hope that you've enjoyed the cards that I made for my day 2 of my 7 days of Halloween. I will leave lists of all the items I used in the description box. And I will also try to find that video for clusters so you can check that out as well. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for stopping by, and we'll see you again tomorrow.